Thank you for joining the Boys and Girls Club Team Summit Momentum. We need to practice good internet safety today. This Teen Summit is designed for young adults 13 and older. If you are younger than 13, you should have parents' permission to join us. You are currently in mute. If you have any questions during the summit or would like to make a comment, we encourage you to use the text box and text us, which can be found on the right-hand side of your screen. Our format today will include several wonderful speakers. After our last speaker, we will have an opportunity to be placed in a breakout room with other teams. These breakout rooms will be facilitated by and led by Boys and Girls Club staff. We hope that you will stay for these breakout conversations. We can also expect people to be popping in and out of the conference. So we'll celebrate those who are here. So let's get started with Momentum, the Boys and Girls Club Virtual Teen Summit. I'm pleased that we have Aaron Lambert with us. Aaron currently serves as the CEO and president of Healthy Blue, a leading managed healthcare plan with Healthy Louisiana Medicaid program that serves more than 260,000 members. Aaron also serves as a board member of the Boys and Girls Club, and Healthy Blue is a longtime supporter of the club. Healthy Blue is also our sponsor for today's Momentum, the Virtual Teen Summit. Aaron, thank you for everything that you do for Boys and Girls Clubs.
Hey, thank you, Pat. Can you hear me?
Definitely can hear you, Aaron. Thank you.
All right, great. So thank you. I'm very excited to be here with you on. Welcome to the 2020 Boys and Girls Club Virtual Teen Summit. As Pat mentioned, Healthy Blue has been a proud supporter of the Boys and Girls Club for many years. At Healthy Blue, our focus is to promote both physical and mental health wellness across the entire state of Louisiana and in those communities that we serve. I know COVID-19 has interrupted the fun and educational activities offered by the Boys and Girls Club, but we will not allow limitations to stop you from connecting with your friends. Healthy Blue understands the importance of interacting with one another, and we are proud to serve as the sponsor of the Virtual Teen Summit. There's a great lineup today with fantastic speakers, so let us remain mindful to motivate those around us to move and set the momentum. Thank you, and let's get ready to move and motivate.
Thank you, Aaron, so much. And again, thanks to Healthy Blue for sponsoring this event. Our next speaker, you may have recently seen on Shark Tank, of all places, a Southern University graduate. LaDante Lotz is the founder and co-owner of Aerobics. I'm sorry. Are you ready for the energy LaDante brings to everything? It's all yours.
Yes, sir. Hey, how's it going?
We're great. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I just want to say thank you to all of you that's joining us today. Man, I'm sorry for the background. I just picked up a print t-shirt making machine, so I have all this heated press and everything back here. But man, I just want to say it is very, very, very important that we keep moving and we keep grooving. That's dancing and having fun. The stress that we are going through right now, a lot of negativity that's around the world, we don't have time for that. We have to keep our cheese up. That's your joy and happiness. And what we're doing, we are using Jigarobics as a vehicle to spread joy and happiness and bringing unity to the community. We want to see everybody loving and just cheese. I just want to see positivity. Please, man. And I just want to say thank you to for the support, Boys and Girls Club. You guys have been a big supporter since day one. And before I stop, I just want to have a little fun with you. Can I have a little fun for y'all a little bit? Can I dance for y'all a little bit?
Yeah, please. Let's do it.
Oh yeah. So look, I'm gonna bring out my friend. This is my guy, my master trainer, Xavier Beretta. He's from Houston, Texas. He's a new master trainer here. And like I said, we're spreading cheese. Do you have anything to say? Look, I just want to say I'm excited here. I want to thank y'all for the opportunity. It's time to get lit while we get fit. Oh, yeah. Let's go. Here we go. We're gonna get lit while we get fit.
Left, right, left, right, left.
We're gonna keep it real simple, real cheesy. Here we go.
Why me make it roll. Why me make it roll. Why me make it roll. Where that line is, 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 where that line is. Give me some bars so I can roll hard. Give me some bars.
not gonna do too much. We just want to entertain. We just want to spread the cheese. And I just want to say, let's elevate others while we elevate ourselves. And let's keep our cheese up, people. Thank you guys so much. Y'all have a good and blessed day.
Well, Dante, thank you so much. I wish we could capture your energy and spirit and bottle it and sell it.
Here you go. Look,
And
it's
Boys and
yours.
Girls Clubs would be making lots of money right now.
It's yours. Let's give me a call after this. We can talk about
There you go.
it.
Thank
You have a good day.
Thank you so much for starting
All right.
off our momentum. He may be a hard act to follow, but our next speaker, I think, is up to the job. Lakithia Poole is the LSU Director of Student Athlete Mental Health. Prior to this position, she was the Assistant Director and the Coordinator of the LSU African American Culture Center. We are honored to have Dr. Poole with us. Just give us some knowledge. Dr. Poole, are you there? There you are.
Can you guys hear and see me? Okay.
You're doing a great job. We can hear you just fine. Thank you for being with us.
Excellent. So hi again, everybody. I know I don't have too much time, so I want to make it simple and sweet. And yes, I cannot match LaDante's energy, especially in trying to talk about a topic that I think is really important, but I think can be a little bit fun. So my hope is that I'll leave you guys with a little bit of knowledge and also just some insight into what it means to talk about mental health. And I know one of our other speakers is going to go in more detail probably about mental health as well. So I want to just cover some general things. In most cases, when we think about our years of being, teenagers, it comes with a lot of stuff. You're going through a lot of different things. You're thinking about a lot of different things. You're having a lot of different experiences. And so, of course, all of us on here who are out of our teens and maybe well out of our teens have maybe some good memories from that time, but also some things where we learned a lot about who we are. And so it's probably affected the place that we are now. And so some of the big things that come up as you continue to grow and to learn are centered around what you think about yourself and what you think about the world around you. And so when we start thinking about how that includes mental health and what does that look like moving forward, it really, really is about this concept of mindfulness and this idea of being able to recognize that the way in which we think and perceive the world and how we choose to go about navigating the world is really how much joy we're going to be able to have day to day in life, in spite of maybe circumstances that are going on, which I'll talk about in a second. So one of the big factors, and again, I tried to keep this super simple, is making sure that if you are someone who you know yourself well enough to know that you have great days some days and some days you don't. That's centered around what we would talk about when we talk about positive mental health and learning who we are. And a lot of times what we learn about certain age groups, certain racial groups, certain social economic statuses, there's a lot of stigma around mental health and whether or not we should be pursuing positive mental health. And so, of course, even though I'm a little biased because it's what I do every day, I think that we all should be pursuing positive mental health and really thinking about critical ways to sort of figure out what do I need to feel like my best self all the time? Because that's how mental health is. Most people sort of imagine mental health as this really scary concept. The TV and media and movies will make you think mental health is centered around like you laying on a sofa in my office and I'm going to have some glasses on and a clipboard and show you these pictures and tell you everything about your life that you ever wanted to know. And it's really just not that at all. It's really centered around being able to sort of find alignment with everything that you may have to make you be able to feel like your best self. So really understanding that there's a lot of stigma around us seeking that support for different reasons that we don't have time to go into around like the medical field and things like that, but just understanding that pursuing mental health is a good thing. Being able to feel like your best self is always a good thing. And being able to understand the ways to get there is really, really important. The second point that I want to make around mental health is this idea of like authenticity and appreciating who you are. So a lot of times in your teenage years, for sure, you definitely sort of have these phases of time where you go through meeting different types of people. Some people are accepting into your friend group, some people are not. And being able to know that as those changes happen, it's really important for you to stay true to who you are, even though that's kind of growing and changing every day. And so the key to that is learning to appreciate the fact that from day to day, you're going to be different. You're going to have different thoughts about things. You're going to have different approaches to the way you want to handle issues and the way you want to enjoy life. And so it's really important that as you grow, as you talk with your parents, as you gain knowledge from your friends, that you learn to really be your most authentic self and that you learn to appreciate who that person is as you continue to grow and change. My third point and second to last point is really understanding though that while that growth is happening, while that change is happening, we do live in a world where there are social and environmental factors that are happening around us that can't help but influence who we are, right? And so we know that there's a lot going on right now for all of us who exist in society today that really is affecting our overall mental health and well-being, but also how we're going to choose to navigate our future careers and jobs and experiences. And so because of that, we have to be able to know that we can't ignore that and the role that it plays also on our mental health and our well-being moving forward. And so it's really, really important that if you are someone who is heavily influenced based on your cultural background, your gender identity, or any of those things, you really need to be able to think intentionally of like, how do I want to either be involved maybe with what's going on to make change, or how is that affecting me or maybe the people that I love, and I want to be able to be a part of making change in that way. So just really being able to understand that some of what we feel sometimes that affects our mental health and well-being isn't necessarily everything that's happening inside of us, but sometimes it's the things that's happening in the world around us or to people that we feel connected to, and being able to know that that too can play a part in how my mood changes from day to day or how I feel about myself and my identity and those sort of things. So that plays a really big part also. And then last but not least is making sure that you find a way to keep balance. So a lot of times when you're in middle school, high school, even going to college, like you're balancing a bunch of things. So you're trying to do well academically. You might be involved in sport. I obviously work at LSU and with our sports teams. And so it's a huge thing, right? Like winning a championship was not easy. Well, people, I think, look at the end and sort of see that, LSU became national champions in football. I want all my teams to be national champions. And so knowing that that takes a lot of energy and effort, but it takes a lot of balance because of the fact that as an individual, we have, just like I've talked about in these other 3 points, all these influences that happen around us that if we aren't attentive to what our needs are personally, emotionally, socially, spiritually, we can kind of shift out of balance a little bit. And so it's really important that as you are, again, trying to enjoy the best of summer that you can in spite of a pandemic, right? Because that's still happening and summer won't look maybe the normal way we usually do. And the school year coming up may not look the way that it usually does. Being able to find a balance around what your emotional needs are and the people that you maybe need to keep around you is very important. And then, of course, self-care, which is just the way in which you totally decide that I'm going to make myself a priority. And so that could be, for some people, self-care is the outlet of like video games or reading a novel or watching some Netflix. And for other people, it means actually doing something and being active, taking a walk, doing yoga, being able to go out and, listen to music, but 6 feet apart from people. But just being able to make sure that you do these things that allow you to feel like you have found some balance and you are making yourself an emotional priority. And I know that sounds weird sort of to say, but it's really, really important to really understand what that looks like in order to best be yourself. So my hope is that this makes mental health not seem as scary, seem like something that is totally simple and easy to start to notice and take care of, especially in the years that you're in right now, where it's really critical to discover who you are and what you feel like is the best possible way to navigate life right now. And hopefully these are simple tips and tools and tricks to help you feel more confident about that. And so, of course, if people have questions later, you guys will know how to reach us, I'm sure, all of us. But I hope that this is helpful in making you think differently about how to take care of your mental well-being and the best possible ways to start to do that. So thank you guys so much.
No, thank you, Dr. Poole, for the front Boys and Girls Clubs. And my best self is better because of what you had to say and being part of us. So thank you very much. Well, our next speaker is a native of Baton Rouge. He attended McKinley High School, then headed to LSU. After a single season on the LSU basketball team, he was drafted number 4 overall to the Portland Trail Blazers. He's now back in Baton Rouge and is a basketball coach and a leader for justice in our community. Tyrus Thomas will share his moving story. Tyrus, we thank you for joining us. I appreciate you being on the morning show. We got you up early the other day.
I was actually up already. I wake up early every morning.
All right, there you go. So, thank you so much for sharing with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm going to try to, I don't know if my screen share works. Hi, guys. Happy to be here. I think you did a great introduction, but more than anything, I've become a mental health advocate. During my time at LSU and the NBA, especially, I suffered through depression, and initially I didn't understand what it was. Dr. Poole, she touched on it about the stigma behind mental health, and I think that there's such a negative stigma behind mental health that it takes a lot of people to almost hit rock bottom before you reach out for help. And so what I wanted to do actually is read my favorite book to you guys, which is Oh, the Places You'll Go by Dr. Seuss. And I'm going to encourage everybody to get their own copy. And that's only if let me see, I don't know how to do this screen sharing thing. Is it up? Is it working?
We see a beautiful beach.
Is it a beach? No. Okay, so it's not working. All right, well, I'll stop that. My screen sharing isn't working.
Okay.
But, okay, how do I get out of here? All right, so I'm going to read, I guess I'll read a little bit. I rather would have had it on the screen. And the reason why this book is my favorite, I know we might think that, when I was younger, my aunt gave me this book. And, I'm like, why she give me this kiddie book? And as I read it every year, I get older and I read it every year. And it basically explains the journey of life. And it talks about the highs, the lows of life, which everyone will go through. And so for me, I went through, my upbringing was, I didn't realize it was traumatic at the time because it was, I guess, a normality for my neighborhood. And so I think a lot of kids are dealing with traumas that as kids, we don't necessarily understand. So I guess to you kids, I can say, when you're not feeling right or things are going through your mind, which for me as a kid, it did often, I didn't understand that those were things that I probably should have been talking to people about. And so I guess from my standpoint, I would tell you guys, I grew up in South Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I played college basketball at LSU, and I achieved my dream of playing in the NBA. I was the number 4 pick, and yet I dealt with mental health issues, and for me, I struggled because I was perceived in one way as this, this superior athlete, this, everything physical, but I didn't pay attention to my mental because it's not something that is positively portrayed in my community where I'm from, in South Baton Rouge. And so I try to always get kids to understand these feelings that we're having and that it's okay, it's normal. So if you have a guy that is living his dream life and he's dealing with mental issues, then you can assume that it's pretty normal. So Oh, the Places You'll Go by Dr. Seuss is something that I recommend everybody on this call, I don't care what age you are, to read, and reread often. I think it applies to our life in many ways. In many situations, the highs, the lows, the good, the bad, and it once I start to understand it, it brought me to a place of understanding that, I'm not alone in what I feel or what I go through. And I think that's sometimes an issue with us. We feel like we're alone and we don't have anybody to talk to, or we don't want to be judged, So there are people that we can reach out to, like Dr. Poole, who, can help you through. There are different professionals that can help us through, and sometimes we need professional help. I guess, so my stance is that, hey, I was a superior athlete. At one point you could turn on the TV every Tuesday or Friday and see me running up and down the court, and I struggled, and at times I still struggle, but I know it's okay now, and I have those resources and those people and those networks that I reach out to, and I have my vices and my tactics that I do to promote positive mental health for myself. So again, to the kids that are on the call, and even to the adults, to the professionals, we all go through things, you know, and I think it's time that we start to normalize checking on your mental health. I mean, if you see someone that is on crutches or in a wheelchair, most people have the common courtesy to stop and hold the door and, you know, do things to help those people that we can see their illness or their deficiency. So, you know, I think we have to be just as mindful and cognizant of those mental illnesses that we may walk around with. So, again, I'm going to stress it. I wish my screen share was working and I would have read it. I just didn't want to, you know, just be talking and talking. But Older Places You'll Go by Dr. Seuss, I definitely encourage everybody, if you don't have a copy, to get a copy and read it and reread it. It's a very short read, so all the kids, you can read it very fast. And yeah, that's all I have. Thank you guys for, you know, allowing me to share a part of me. It's something that I'm embracing more because I know that people need to hear that side, and it's not the easiest thing for me to do, but I value people growing and liberating from it more than I do, you know, my embarrassment or my insecurity. So again, I appreciate you guys for having me on, and I look forward to working with the Boys and Girls Club and Boys and Girls in Baton Rouge, period. So thanks.
All right, thank you so much. I am just really humbled by your experience and your story, and thank you for being part of this. Tyrus is a friend of Boys and Girls Clubs and a real true champion. So thank you again, Tyrus, for sharing with us. Our next speaker wears many hats and many roles. He's an author, a youth motivated speaker, a teen mental health professional, a suicide prevention expert. Today, Jeff Yalden wants to share, and in typical Jeff's way, he shares, and shares. So Jeff, thank you for joining us today, and we're glad that you're with us.
Hey, Mr. Pat, thank you so much, Boys and Girls Club, everybody that's involved, Dr. Poole, Mr. Thomas. It's a pleasure and honor to be on here with you. To all the young people, adults, parents, anybody that might be listening, I'm excited and honored to be able to plant seeds today. And that's something I've come to learn in my life, is that people come into your life for one or two reasons, either to plant seeds or to pick the fruit and walk away. When someone walks out on you in your life, let them go. I think a lot of times, like, where are you going? What, did I do something wrong? I thought we were friends. People come in for plant seeds, pick fruit, get something for themselves. I'm excited listening to Dr. Poole talk about mental health, and then Mr. Thomas talk about mental health. I want to skirt around it, but address it, but I want to do it in a different way. I am a man that proudly lives with mental illness. I'm diagnosed with major depression, bipolar type 2, and post-traumatic stress disorder. And I'll tell you, I say proudly because when I got diagnosed and I accepted it and I looked at my life and I said, this is starting to make sense. What was making sense was I grew up and everybody else was the problem. My parents were the problem, the teachers were the problem, coaches were the problem, my friends were the problem. And it got to a point where I started to look at myself and realize maybe I'm the problem. So one of the first things that I really want to encourage each and every one of you to do, get to know who you are. Be comfortable with who you are. Be comfortable with who you are not. Learn to be able to look at yourself, to ask better questions, like, not like, well, why did this happen? But maybe like, how could I improve my life? How can I be a better athlete? How can I be a better student? How can I be more mentally more prepared? How can I better my mental well-being? Right now, we are going through really tough times. And young people that are on this call, I need you to not just listen to me, but to listen to everybody that is trying to give this advice and support you. I never had this growing up. We're dealing with a pandemic, uncertain times, a new normal. The screen sharing right here, and you might not like it, but you know something? The only constant in life is change. And you have to be willing to accept the things that you can't accept. And you have to have this new mentality of being permanently flexible and rolling with it. But in order to do that, three things really matter. And I'm going to simplify it. And this is the surface of mental health. Number one, you wake up, you get up, you dress up, you show up. And what matters from there? Your attitude every day, the choices you make every day, and your behavior. We're also dealing with Mr. Floyd and all the protests in the country. I'll tell you something. That raises my anxiety and elevates my anger. But when I became more aware of being a man that lives with mental illness, I've come to realize that I can't let this bother me and want to do something and want to go out there and try and change the world. So you know what I've learned to do? I've learned to change what I can change and let go of what I know I can't change. I don't know if I go out and do all this protesting, I have a voice, you have a voice. But instead of getting angry, anger has caused a lot of wars in this world in which nobody has ever won. I've had to learn to choose love, compassion, empathy. I've had to learn to say, all right, I know I can't make a difference in the big picture, but I can make a difference in my inner circle, my family, my close friends, my community. So I want to encourage all of you, when you look at something and it might be overwhelming, step back and kind of break it down and say, okay, how can I simplify this and be a part of the little picture? Because when we take care of the little things in our lives, the big things take care of itself. So you are growing up, I am living, we are living in very tough times. But here's something else. You have a choice. You can be the victim or you can be the victor. You can choose to be bitter, or you can make a choice to be better. And so in being the victor and choosing to be better, I'm going to tell you something that you have to be more aware of. Today, I think young people are growing up in a world where you're going to end up working jobs that don't even exist yet. So what I'm trying to say to you is you have to be more self-motivated. You have to be more responsible, be more accountable. And what all of this means, when you can look at yourself in the mirror and say, you know what, I got to take care of me. That's self-care. If there's a question, I want to be able to find someone that I can ask the question to get the answer that you want to get. So being more motivated, being more accountable, advocate for yourself, your self-care, that is not selfish. You take care of yourself first, and that brings this anxiety, this stress, this feeling of overwhelming, the expectations. You bring that from 1 to 10, 10 high stress, high anxiety, you take care of yourself, and you bring it down to a 3 or a 4. And you can function so much better. I learned this, I'm nearly 50 years old, and I learned this through therapy. So yes, I'm in therapy. Yes, I'm on medication. And yes, I just got certified to be a yoga instructor last night. Hey man, big people can do yoga. And I love it. And I think yoga and exercise, to me, is as important as therapy and medication. If you were to choose between therapy and medication, let me give you the difference. Medication is like a Band-Aid. That's it. Therapy, like Mr. Thomas was saying, gives you tools. It gives you ways to problem solve in life. It gives you ways to cope through life. I hope that makes sense. Another thing I want to talk about in the time that we're growing, first, let me compliment and say thank you to those of you that chose to come online to listen to speakers. And I want to tell you why I want to compliment you. Growth mindset versus fixed mindset. When I was growing up, 13, 14, 15, I grew up in Long Island, New York. I was a 3-sport, all-state varsity athlete, heavily recruited to play Division I football until one day. I had to take the exam called the SATs. I wasn't as smart as Dr. Poole, not as smart as Mr. Thomas to go to LSU, get drafted number 4. What happened was, academically, I was not eligible to go to college to play college sports. That is the moment where my attitude changed, and I thought, you know what, okay. What I should have done, but I didn't, because of a fixed mindset. Yo, you don't know me. You don't walk in my shoes. You don't know what I got to go through. You don't got to see what I see. Do what I do. And I know every one of you can tell me stories. Where I went wrong, where many people go wrong, is I became the victim. But I could have said, so, okay, what do you mean? What can I do now? Well, you could go to community college. You can bring up your grades. You can prove yourself. Maybe second semester, get the scholarship because you proved yourself, or maybe sophomore year. But I didn't listen. I pushed the messenger away. Many people sabotage their life because they don't listen to their mom. They don't listen to their dad, their aunt, their uncle, their coach, their teacher. They don't ask for help and seek a counselor or something. So that is one of the most defining moments in my life. And today, nearly 50 years old, this is back when I was 17 years old, I'm living the choices I made. And here's why. It takes 2 seconds to make a choice. It could take some 30, 40 years to recover from that choice. Now, what Mr. Thomas was saying, and I understand, I didn't know then when I was labeled as ADD, ADHD, I wasn't ADD, ADHD. I had a learning disability. What I've come to understand now, I had bipolar, but I don't want to diagnose kids. I want to look to treat the symptom. I want our kids to get to know ourselves. We do that through advocating. I journal every day to know how I'm feeling, what I need to do. And some of the things that led to the choices in my life, I can tell you many things, but I don't want to waste time, but I'll tell you one significant thing. My father has never told me he's proud of me. For many years, that hurt. But the more I got to know me, and the more I got to understand mental health, I've learned that that's okay. You want to know why it's okay? My dad doesn't know how. My friends, to anybody that's listening, hear these words. You only know what you know. And if you only know what you know, then you can only do what you have chosen to learn. Growth mindset, not fixed mindset. But you know something else? You don't know what you don't know. You know who my role model is? My dad. Because I've come to learn you can't change people, you can't change places, you can't change things. You can be angry, you can be the victim, you can put blame here, blame there. But you know what? I just choose to love and be compassionate, to be empathetic, and to understand, to live with grace. I want to also share this with you. 3 things I think are really important. It took me many years to understand this. And it's going to come across very simple. Number 1, I think people, especially young people, need 3 things. I'll change your life right here, right now. Number 1, sleep. If you're ugly, you need more sleep. Like I'm not saying you're ugly, but what I am saying is Young people today need 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep. But if you're ugly, you need more than 8 hours. And what I'm saying about ugly is if you have that victim mentality, if you have a bad attitude, if you're tired all the time because you're up on Snapface and Insta, and something just happened to my video. Okay, I think good. So number one, get your sleep. Number two, better nutrition. 5 years ago, I was given less than a year to live, 350 pounds, my diabetes. I had to lose 100 pounds. Listen, more water, less soda, more protein, less carbs. This processed stuff, listen, pay attention and be cognizant of the food that you're eating, what you're putting in your body. That includes drugs, self-medicating, vaping, pot. Number three, get involved, man. Get involved, because the more involved you are, less isolation. Self-isolation is toxic, but the more involved you are, the better it is for your self-esteem, coping skills, problem-solving skills, life skills. You can learn to agree to disagree. The more involved you are, you can go out and protest and have a voice without the anger component to it. So I want to encourage sleep, nutrition, get more involved. I also want to say this. There's two feelings that people have, especially young people today, I'm finding. Number one, they feel like they're alone. Number two, they feel like they're a disappointment. And young people are afraid to talk and ask for help, and here's why. They're afraid that you're going to be judged. Folks, non-judgment, man. Everybody has a story. You're afraid that your parents aren't going to validate your thoughts and your feelings. Listen, thoughts are thoughts. Like an arm is an arm, a leg is a leg. Thoughts is just what they are, they're thoughts. But you heard Mr. Thomas talk about, he went through school, he went through LSU, got drafted number 4. He found out later about depression and mental illness and how much it affects you. And I don't know his story, but I know I'm speaking for myself. When I started being willing to talk about my feelings, but men were taught, hey man, suck it up. We don't talk about feelings. You pick yourself up, you go, you grind. Listen, I love talking about my feelings. I love it, because I feel like matter of fact, last night I got a text from a friend who the whole summer youth camps were canceled. And she asked me how I was doing. I said, how are you doing? She responded, she says, I'm fine. I responded back to her, I says, Karen, it's not a very convincing message, really. How's your heart today? I said, how is your heart? You see, when we ask the question, like, how are you? The typical response is, I'm good. What does that mean? It means I'm fine, leave me alone, I don't want to talk about it, because people are afraid to talk. But when we ask the question, how is your heart? It's like, whoa, like you care? Yeah, I care. I'll give you something else. You could take I'm telling you stuff you can't learn in college. People ask 2 questions every day. You show up, 2 questions you got to answer for people. Number 1, can I trust you? Number 2, do you care about me? You let people know, I got you back. You can trust me. Number 2, I care about you. I don't care who you are, I care about you. Listen, if we can hate and not even know someone, why can't we just choose to love and not even know someone? Man, loving is so much easier than having anger or hate or carrying this anger and not forgiving somebody. So if you feel alone, and what that typically means is you feel like you don't have meaningful relationships, well, get more involved. If you feel like you're a disappointment or a burden, or you don't want to burden someone because young people are having to adult more because so many broken families, and so you're like, well, I don't want to bother you with my problems because I know you have your problems, and to bother you, it's going to take away from what you got to deal with, and you got to deal with me, and I'm not going to. Young people, don't you worry about parents or adults that are in your life. It is our responsibility to give back to you, to serve you, to love you, and to help you. So if you feel alone and you feel like you might be a disappointment or a burden, which basically means that you're not making this notable contribution to the world, if we don't address this in our heart, these feelings manifest, and someday they come out in ways that could take you some time to have to recover. So that's why I think it's so important. If you have these feelings, thoughts, if you're depressed, anger, don't be afraid to talk to mom, dad, or a significant trusted adult in your life. Please. Because if you don't, but yet you're trying to cope, you're trying to problem solve, what happens is we start to think about self-harm. And many years ago, self-harm was more prevalent with girls than it was boys. And then kind of boys started to catch up a little bit. Today, actually, self-harm is more prevalent in boys than it is girls. And self-harm isn't just cutting, it's banging your head, it's pulling your hair, it's reckless behavior, it's self-medicating. Let's talk about self-medicating for a second. I was at Elma College back in September, October. After my talk with all the athletes, one young man is looking around, making sure everyone's leaving. Okay, nobody wants to be seen talking to the mental health guy. So this young man comes down, he says to me, he says, "Hey, Jeff, how you doing?" I said, "Good, man." I said, "Nice to meet you." He says, "Can I ask you a question?" I says, "Yeah." He says, "So you were an athlete growing up, and this young man was the captain of the football team, a senior, 21 years old, nice kid." He says, "Jeff, man, what is your thought about being an athlete and smoking pot?" I said, let me tell you something. I said, I always thought to myself when I got into this speaking and working with young people that if I can't be honest, I don't want to do this. I said, I've never touched a drug in my life. I've never smoked pot, never picked up a cigarette. I don't even drink. I think because I grew up in a family of alcoholics, it doesn't matter. I said, let me ask you a question. I said, after a game, you and the boys, you go out, you take a hit. I don't know. That's your business. I said, do you do it because you're just with the boys, you take a hit? I don't know. Or listen. I said, is it maybe there's something in your heart, this void, this pain, this feeling that you're having trouble dealing with, coping, problem solving. And so by getting high or drinking, it's taking away the pain or that burn in your heart. But then when you sober up, the pain comes back. I said, does that make sense? He's like shaking his head, acknowledging it. I said, so what you're saying is by self-medicating, it makes you feel better temporarily. He says, yeah. I said, let me ask you something. I said, if I could give you in a healthy way what you're getting in an unhealthy way, would you be interested? He says, well, yeah. I said, listen, I don't want to preach. I don't want to tell you what to do, but you just heard my story. I'm in therapy. I'm on medication. I'm proud to say this, and I do yoga. I said, in college, you have free mental health. I said, how about, he says to me, he says, yeah, but what would my team think that, if I, what are the players going to think? I said, how amazing. You're the captain, you're a senior, you're dealing with trouble at home. You get a young teammate come up to you, hey man, why you in counseling? Well, I'm the captain. I want to better my life. I want to serve you guys. So I'm still in touch with this young man. He's in therapy. Great story. I love it. I want to leave. I don't want to leave, but I got to leave. I got 1 minute. One minute. Listen, social media depression, social media, the internet. Listen, it's great. It's a new world. I get it. but the social media depression is leading us to be living more in social isolation. I'm going to tell you this. If you spend more than 4 or 5 hours a day on your devices, you're 70% more likely to have major depression in your life. Balance and boundaries. Put the phone down, get more involved. My friends, I'm going to leave you with this. You're responsible for your life. You're responsible every day for the choices you make, the attitude you have, and your behavior. I love you. I love you to the moon and back. I don't even know you. I love you. My friends, thank you. I'm Jeff Yalden. My website's jeffyalden.com, and you can follow me on social media at Jeff Yalden. Let me know how I can serve you. Take care. Namaste.
Hey, Jeff, thank you so much for what you said. I do have a couple of questions, and maybe I'm going to address them to Dr. Poole, and not to get into a sparring message about what Jeff said, but he said something about kids have the privilege to not be the victim. And the population that you serve and that we serve here at Boys and Girls Clubs, they are victims not because of their own makings. Living in fractured communities and social racism and the police and those kind of things. Can you talk a little bit about that? And I understand that it's an internal thing, but can we visit on that for a minute?
May I speak first, Dr. Poole, and then let you wrap it up? Hey, Pat, great question. Thank you. Let me say this. In life, circumstances, situations, it might not be your fault. However, I've come to learn that I don't want to be the victim. I want to be the victor, positive mindset. And so what I want to say, and I want people to understand, in life, it might not be your fault. But if you want to better your life, you have to choose to take responsibility where you are, what might be going on, to improve it, to better your situation. How you do that? Ask questions, surround yourself with like-minded people, and don't ever be afraid to ask for help to be able to move on past this. Does that make sense?
I'll let Dr. Poole, if you want to chime in on
Great
this.
question.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Jeff. I think it's about, and he mentioned this earlier, always figuring out ways to create a growth mindset in spite of your circumstances, right? So all of us have a story. So it's great to be, you know, for me, the director of student athlete mental health at LSU. I'm a Louisiana girl. That's like a big deal. I'm a Black female. I have 3 degrees, like all that's wonderful. But at the end of the day, that was not an easy journey. And there were people along the way who had to inspire me, or sometimes maybe even criticize me in order to figure out the path that I wanted to be on and what I did and didn't want for my own life. And so I think in trying to figure out how to overcome circumstances that just are out of your control, or things that, again, are not, are systems that we are all subject to, that were created and designed maybe for some of us not to achieve. And so how do you then overcome things that were created not for you? And part of that is all the things I think that all of the speakers have said today about being able to sort of know who you are, find that authentic version of you, you know, push back against the things that don't feel like they fit who you are, and finding your own voice, finding that voice in you that allows you to be able to say, this is what I want for myself, and I'm not gonna let anything get in the way of that. That doesn't mean you won't have stumbles. That doesn't mean you won't have difficulties. Even when you get the things you want, you're going to have difficulties. That's what Tyrus was even talking about a little bit. And so it's just kind of this idea of being able to sort of understand that when life throws you those punches, you have to get back up, but figuring out what support systems do you need, whether that's therapy, parents, mentors, any of those things, you have to be able to figure out what it is for you that is necessary to get you to keep going. Because if you would pick any of the adults on this line right now, we all have a story, I'm sure, of how there's a reason why we shouldn't all be here today. And so being able to figure out for you, what does that look like you know, as far as support and resources and, you know, not being completely discouraged by sometimes what society puts in our face, because that's what's happening. That's how you overcome it, and you keep that positive state of mind in order to move forward. But be realistic with yourself. Know that stuff's going to happen, but just don't stay there.
Dr. Poole, you talked about being your best self. And when my child was 13 years old and I complained that he was making a C in math, he's like, this is the best I could be. And, you know, all he wanted to do is play video games. This is who I am, Dad, you know. So how do you take from what you think you are at the moment to the real inner self that you have inside you? How do you distinguish those things, or how do you peel that layer off?
Yeah, I think one of the things about, and these are for my teens who think their parents are being hard on them, and like, I think a lot of times parents, we parent out of fear, right? Like we don't want our kids to make either the same mistakes we made, or we want their lives to be better than ours. And so we push them in a way that is centered around fear, but not necessarily around that like resilience and that growth mindset and that idea of making somebody be able to become the best version of themselves and not be like worried about what's out there. And so I think when we start talking about then what that best self is, you have to be able to define that in the way that fits who you are today. So my best self when I was a teenager looked probably really different than my best self now in my 30s. You know, it's just different. And so I think being able to sort of understand for yourself as an individual, like, what is it that brings me joy right now? What is it that brings out my creativity? What do I love to do? You know, and I think having room for that, and then also being able to have open communication with your parents about what those things are that you want and that you need. You know, my mom was wonderful. She was a single mother, but I mean, she let me do everything that she could. And so, I mean, I played instruments. I'm from New Orleans, so everything is music and art and food. And clearly I'm not a musician today, right? Like I'm sure my dad is disappointed because he is. And so it's just sort of this idea that in the moment of me being that 12, 13, 14-year-old, music brought me joy in that way. And that was the best version of me. But I also at the same time cared greatly about my grades. And so I did really, really well in school, so that when I got to the time to decide for college, I was like, I want to go here, you know? And so being able to sort of allow yourself that freedom and that flexibility to figure out who you are, but be comfortable enough with your parents or whoever the adult figures in your life are, like sharing that with them so that it gets validated. And so that they say, it's okay that at 16, you're not great in math, but you actually aspire to be an engineer. Well, let's see how we get you there, you know? And so being able to embrace that, I think that's the best self sort of concept. It's like, who is it that feels good to me today to be? And when I get to the next point, then I become more of that person. But we're always kind of constantly becoming more of ourselves.
I appreciate that. Even though you did go to Florida, I believe, right?
I went to Florida State.
Oh, Florida State. I'm sorry. Well, I don't know. That may be just as bad if you didn't go to LSU, right?
But I went to LSU later. I came back home. I went to LSU later. But yeah. I mean, that was part of it. That was in my journey. I wanted to get out of Louisiana at the time because a lot was going on. I was a high school senior during Hurricane Katrina. It was crazy. Wow. And so being able to know my best self meant getting out of that bubble for a little bit to go find who I was supposed to be.
Thank you very much for sharing that. So we've kind of reached the end of our formal part of the Momentum, the Virtual Teen Summit. We're now going to be placing everybody into breakout rooms. And our Boys and Girls Club staff from Baton Rouge and Lafayette and New Orleans will be facilitating some conversations. And we really want to hear from all the teams. But before we leave, we definitely want to thank all of our speakers today. I hope you've enjoyed them. We want to thank Aaron and Healthy Blue. I think Aaron's camera was off when he gave his little talk at the very beginning. Aaron, you want to show your face for a minute? He's a rock star. There he is. So Aaron,
it wasn't on at the beginning? I could have swore it was on. Oh.
It was not on the feed. So this is what Aaron Lambert looks like, everybody. So Aaron, thank you and your staff and team for always supporting Boys and Girls Clubs. Y'all are rock stars over there. So thank you very much. So we are going to now break out into our breakout rooms. So you should be going into being forced in if you'll have to accept that and be placed into breakout rooms. We may have several facilitators in the same room because we're making fewer breakout sessions. And if anyone's left in this session and would like to go to a breakout room, we can maybe move you also at that time.